All right, let's talk about something that, well, affects every single one of us: stress. We're going to break down what it really is, how it impacts our mental health, and this is the important part: how we can find a way to feel better. So let's dive right in. You know that feeling, right? Your heart's just pounding before a big test, or maybe your stomach's doing flips during a really tough conversation. Yeah, we've all been there. And those feelings, they're not random. That's literally your body sending up a flare, signaling that it's under pressure. If any of that sounds familiar, then you already know what stress feels like. And let's get one thing straight right away: it is not a sign of weakness. It's not some personal failing. It's just part of being human. It's our body's built-in alarm system for all the stuff life throws at us. Okay, so we've all felt it. We know what it's like in our bodies. But what is stress, really? Let's get into the nitty-gritty. So, the classic definition from Hans Selye calls it a non-specific response. Now, non-specific is the key word here. Think about it. Your body's alarm system doesn't really care why the alarm is going off. Whether it's a huge work deadline or, a bear in your campsite, the initial physical reaction is pretty much the same. It's a general, all-purpose, uh-oh signal that gets triggered by any kind of demand. But here's a twist. Not all stress is the bad guy. It's super important to know the difference. You've got eustress, which is actually good stress. You know, that little buzz that gets you fired up for a big game or helps you focus on a presentation. That's eustress. Then you've got distress. That's the kind we all hate, the overwhelming, crushing feeling that just wears you out. And what's wild is that sometimes the trigger is the same. It's just how much of it we get and how we see it that flips the switch from helpful to harmful. Okay, so if stress is the reaction, what's causing it? Well, those triggers have a name. They're called stressors. And figuring out what your personal stressors are, that's step one to getting a handle on all this. Let's start with the big ones: major life events. We're talking about the huge, life-altering moments: getting married, retiring, going through a divorce. And notice something here. Some of these are happy things, but even good changes, like a wedding, require a ton of adjustment. And that adjustment, that change, is where the stress comes from. All right, next up, we have what are called daily hassles. And honestly, these can be the sneakiest stressors of all. Think of them like tiny paper cuts. One little paper cut? Annoying, but whatever. But 100 of them all over your hands? That's real pain. It's the same with misplacing your keys, getting stuck in traffic, waiting in a super long line. Each one is small, but they add up, and that constant drip, drip, drip of frustration can really wear you down. And of course, there are the heaviest stressors. Things like chronic role strain, which is a more technical way of saying you're dealing with a really tough long-term situation like poverty or being a caregiver. And then there are traumas, those sudden, awful events that can change everything in an instant. So when all these stressors start piling on, they don't just stay out there. They get inside our heads. And that's where they can create these intense internal battles, this mental tug of war that really cranks up the anxiety. First, there's something called an avoidance conflict. You can just think of this as being stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's a total no-win situation where you have to make a choice, but honestly, every option stinks. Yep, caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. That phrase just nails it, doesn't it? You feel completely trapped because no matter which way you turn, you're heading towards something you really don't want. Think about this real-world example: having to choose between being unemployed or taking a job that you hate and that doesn't pay well. I mean, neither one is a good outcome, right? But you have to pick one. And that's what makes it so stressful. Even when you make a decision, it doesn't bring relief. It just brings a different kind of problem. Okay, now for a different and maybe even trickier kind of conflict. It's called approach avoidance. This is when one single thing, one goal, has both really good parts and really bad parts. It's like you're drawn to it and repelled by it at the exact same time. People often call this a mixed blessing, and that's a perfect description. One part of your brain is screaming, "Go for it," while the other part is yelling, "No way, run." And you're just stuck in the middle, paralyzed by indecision. A great example is the idea of getting married. On one hand, you've got security, love, companionship, all these amazing things you want to move towards. But on the other hand, you might be thinking about the loss of personal freedom, all the new responsibilities, things you might want to move away from. See? The very same goal has this huge push and pull built right into it. All right, so we've talked about what stress is, where it comes from, and the messes it can make in our heads. Enough of the bad news, right? The big question is,
what on earth do we do about it? Let's switch gears and talk about solutions, about how to actually cope.
So when it comes to coping, there are basically two main roads you can take. The first is task-oriented coping. It's like you see a tangled knot and you roll up your sleeves to actually untie it. You're dealing with the problem head-on. The other road is emotion-focused coping. This is more like throwing a blanket over the knot. Sure, you can't see it anymore and you might feel better for a minute, but the knot is definitely still there. Let's really zoom in on those constructive, task-oriented actions, because this is where you take your power back. First, you've got attack. Now, that sounds aggressive, but it just means facing the problem head-on with a plan. Like, if you have debt, you sit down and make a real budget. Then there's withdrawal. This is a smart, strategic retreat. It's knowing when to walk away from a fight you can't win. And finally, there's compromise. This is about being flexible. Maybe you lower your expectations a bit or accept a slightly different goal. All three of these are about doing something, and that's what makes them so powerful. Look, sometimes we try all these things, and it's still just too much. And that is 100% okay. That's when getting professional help isn't just a good idea, it's a game changer. So let's pull back the curtain and talk about what therapy is actually like. You'll often hear psychotherapy called the talking cure, and it's such a great name because at its core, that's what it is. It's not magic. It's a supportive, guided conversation where you and a professional work together to figure out your challenges and find new tools to deal with them. And it's not some big mystery. There's a real process, a roadmap. First, you build a connection with your therapist. That's rapport. Then they get to know your story. From there, you pinpoint the main issues you want to work on. Then comes the actual work, the sessions with a clear plan. And finally, when you've hit your goals, therapy ends. It's a journey with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this. Understanding your stress is the first crucial step. Just knowing what's going on, what your triggers are, what your conflicts are, that alone gives you so much power. But the magic really happens in step 2, taking action, whether that's a small step you take on your own or the big step of asking for help. So I'm going to leave you with a question to think about. After everything we've talked about, what is one small, concrete, task-oriented step, something you can actually do, that you can take today to deal with one of the stressors in your life? Just one small thing.